in the post, I wanted to do this because I felt like this would be something different, and it would be good dialogue. We would have people chime in, as we always have people chime in. But getting right into it, the first quote, and I quote, Ben Simmons' defense is MF elite. I mean, next level, goddammit, end quote. And that is from Kendrick Perkins, who was known as a defensive player during his tenure as a player in the league. Mm-hmm. This ties into Ben Simmons now and to this team now for the simple fact that we mentioned, and there was all talk about how Ben Simmons should be traded or included in the trade for James Harden. A lot of people were on that boat, but there were also people who understood the game of basketball, one being his present coach, and understands or understood the impact that his defense and the things that he does very well bode on his team. Robert Reeves, thanks for tuning in. So I like that quote. Actually, I love that quote. And then there was one from Doc Rivers who says, and I quote, "He is such a unique defender. Ben is a chameleon."
I agree.
End quote. I can go along with that. You know. So getting back to that first one from Kendrick Perkins, and this is taken from a defensive-minded player in the league who won a championship in the league. Mm-hmm. Just like James Eric Clack said on the last video, in the last segment, no rebounds, no rings. Like I said, you get a rebound, it's giving your team an opportunity to score the ball, okay, or to do something positive. So Ben Simmons has the ability right now in the current NBA to be a model, if you will, of a Dennis Rodman. Mm-hmm. Where right now in the NBA he can arguably guard positions 1 through 5. Because of his size, his aggressive nature, his dedication, and his skill set.
I'm gonna tell you what's crazy. And it's like you said, it's somehow we always on the same page. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I dug into the little crates and I went into kind of like a versus of a combination of his experience, a combination of, statistical data, analysis, and all that old craziness. The one thing that when I look at the defender and say they could arguably be the greatest defender ever, I think Dennis Rodman, to me, is the best defender ever. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And his ability to play kind of like 1 through the 4 and the 5, because he would play the 5.
Yeah.
Wonderfully. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? And I look at Ben Simmons, and I think what separates them is intensity. Mm-hmm. I think the intensity that Dennis Rodman brought, because Dennis Rodman was a rebounding machine.
Right.
Ben isn't he's not a rebounding machine.
Right.
But because he does other things for the team offensively, Dennis Rodman didn't have to worry about that.
I was just getting ready to say that.
You know what I mean?
That defense, that offensive thing kind of
it kind of takes away from
them.
it. Yeah. So if he didn't have to be the point guard, or if he didn't have to be a facilitator, he could solely focus on defense, he would be a Dennis Rodman type of guy. Mm-hmm. I'm more so liking him to Scottie Pippen.
Okay. Because
Scottie Pippen was the guard. He did run the offense. Mm-hmm. He did defend from 1 to 3, sometimes to 4. Never to 5, but 1 to 4. And he's a smaller player than Ben. Ben's 6'10". Yeah. Scottie was 6'7".
Now, real quick before you finish, I'm glad you brought that up. Second quote from his current coach, Doc Rivers. And it goes, Dennis Rodman is crazy in a defensive way. Mm-hmm. As a player, they're completely different players.
They are.
That's exactly what Baldy just mentioned. He said, but Dennis would often guard 1 through 5. Then he says, again, he brought another person that Baldy just brought up. Scottie Pippen is in that category as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's very few people.
It's not many at all. And I mean, if you start breaking down God, this would make Scottie Pippen so good because there was no other Scottie Pippen.
Mm-hmm.
The only person that came close to being a Scottie Pippen at that time was Grant Hill.
Right.
Before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
He was the next type of Scottie Pippen guy.
Right.
Lamar Odom was sort of like that as being a versatility guy, but not as a defender.
Mm-hmm.
Grant Hill played defense.
Yeah. Frank said Scottie was an all-around player. I agree.
He was arguably the best all-around player for his tenure before he got older. He arguably you could put him anywhere, almost anywhere on that court. And offensively, he knew what it was like to be the guy at one particular time too.
Absolutely.
So Ben knows what it's like to be the guy at one particular time.
Mm-hmm.
But he also knows what it's like to be a facilitator, which Scottie was.
Mm-hmm.
And if a lot of you guys never read Phil Jackson's book, Phil Jackson said, I barely talked to Michael. I send everything through Scottie.
Yep.
So Scottie was the facilitator.
That
Scottie was the
11
floor
rings,
general.
right?
Hmm?
Was that 11 rings?
That was 11.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Dance book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of amazing that when we're looking at how to compare guys, he's only going to look like Scottie Pippen to me. He'll never look like a Dennis Rodman to me. Ben Wallace was more of a Dennis Rodman.
Right.
Because he was solely a rebounder, a defender, an intimidator. You know what I mean? That's who those guys, that's who they are.
Right.
With these dudes, they just got more versatility, man. And they do more for their team.
Yeah.
Then, I'm not saying one trumps the other, but one plays on both sides of the ball at a high level.
Yeah. I think the disparity in that whole thing is the simple fact that the way the game has progressed and changed more so, where it's a major issue on scoring and the three-point shot.
Yeah.
But we could easily sit here and argue or debate and say some of the players that we felt were some of the greats, i.e. Michael Jordan, who we just spoke about, didn't really have, for lack of a better word, a consistent three-point shot until later on in his career. Darren Juiceman DeWalt, my cousin, what's up, cuzzo? He says that Ben's still the guy in his book. I totally agree. And like I said, people, you have to fully understand the basic concept of the game of basketball. It kind of goes back into that GOAT thing. It's not a individual sport. It's a team sport. So you will have players, and Barley understand this as well as a coach and another coach. You understand that you're going to have people that are maybe not offensively gifted.
Right.
But they do a lot of other things.
Right. And how do you utilize that
And
time?
how do you utilize that, which I think was the lack in the previous coaching staff. I think right now, again, with the Sixers, you see the comfortability in Ben. There's not much confusion in what he's supposed to do on the court. He knows he's the facilitator. But as you see this season and these games progress, he's beginning, Claude, thanks for tuning in. He's beginning to do the things that he does well and incorporate them into his game. I.e., when he has the guard on him, the smaller guard, he's going into the post. When he's getting that opportunity, he's using his quickness and strength at his size to go downhill and get to the basket. Now, me, for one, I love Ben. I love the things that he does. But I'm going to keep it 100. I still want him to begin to shoot that jump shot. He's starting to incorporate that over-the-shoulder hook, which I like. But there are instances in his game or in games where I feel like because of his size, his speed, and his strength, he should go a little bit stronger to the rim. There are occasions where I think he should go to the rim and attempt to dunk. And that may be something going on with him. It's psychological because of how he shoots free throws, which are beginning to get better. But that could play a part in it because he does it so well. And I think he kind of gets caught up or lost in the fact that I'm 6'10", I'm going to the cup, ain't nobody stopping me whether I lay it up or dunk it. But you have to understand that at some point you want to be one of the greats. You have to do what some of the greater players, or some of the players that we consider greater, smaller than you, MJ, Scotty, they went to the cup and they finished. You have some guys now that are like that. The guards, the Spider-Mans, you know, guys that are smaller that go a lot more, not a lot, a little bit more aggressive and finishing around the rim. And I'm not saying that he can't finish around the rim. I'm just saying, for me, in my interpretations, that would put him a little bit further up the ladder.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not knocking what he does, because I understand basketball and I understand what this team is about right now. And the things that he does very well for this team are very, very beneficial. I.e., the last 2 games, and this is just off track a little bit, I still think we need to strengthen that bench. We still need to get another scorer off that bench, because the last 2 games that we lost were definitely winnable games.
Right.
And people might cringe when I say this, but don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is the end-all, be-all. But the way Shake has been playing in his new role, you see that scoring missed in the last 2 games.
Right. And you know what's crazy when we talk about Ben Simmons in terms of what he needs to do to excel his game slightly, in terms of as an offensive player and what that looks like. And you brought up a good point about how maybe his inability to truly be aggressive offensively could shine light on his poor free throw shooting. It's gotten better, like you said. It's gotten better. But a lot of people shy away from that because it's going to shine light on another deficiency that you have.
Right.
So is he able to take what comes next? We've already been saying that you won't shoot the jump shot.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you start going to that free throw line, and now you're going to be shooting 60-something%, well, now that's another chink in your armor. Now, instead of taking these hits and getting better at it, he's shying away from it slightly.
Right.
And so he has to have what we call short-term memory. You cannot work.
Absolutely.
First of all, get off of social media, period. If that's where your energy comes from, get away from it.
Let it go.
Shut it down. Don't read articles. Stay in the gym.
Yep.
Everything that you're working out on should be what you're going to get during the game.
I.e., one of the toughest guards in the league in his time, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Most
I
definitely.
mentioned this a while back,
Most
and there's a
definitely.
training video, and you can find this on YouTube, where he does training videos, and what he does in those videos is he tells the players that he's training, I'm not going to just bring you in here and have you work out on a certain drill. I'm going to put you in positions where you're going to work on things that you will get in the game that will translate to your game. Okay. Claude says, we all know he needs to develop the jump shot, but more importantly, he needs to become great at the things he does good. He's good at, absolutely. He does have to be thinking dunk before he goes up strong. I don't think he's scared to go to the rim anymore. He's just naturally smooth other than an aggressive finisher. Frank says he needs to improve his jump shot. Also says he needs to get to that line. I agree with those things. But again, Claude just made a good point. He may be more of the finesse type of guy. But I think, again, some of the age plays into that as well. And some of the accomplishments that he already has. He's a 2-time All-Star. So he knows if I stay where I'm at, I'm pretty much going to be an All-Star.
Right.
But you talk about wanting to be considered or in the conversation as one of the great players in the league. You have to definitely, again, like both Carl and I both agree, improve on the things that you do very well right now.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Now, you look at the guys who work great. Okay. You can take Michael Jordan, who is great. Michael Jordan did not have the greatest handle.
Right.
But he had a handle where he was comfortable with going right or left. Young Mike favored the right-hand side of the court more.
Right.
But as he got older, the left side of the court was what people began to give him.
Yeah.
And he figured it out. He understood how to be better on this side of the court. That's just becoming a more all-around player.
Right.
How to finish your game.
Yeah.
Figure out what you're not good at.
Mm-hmm.
Compound on what you're good at, but figure out the things that make you even kill all the way around.
And the other thing, you know, we talk about basketball as being a fraternity, and what some of the things you just mentioned just made me think of our recently deceased, God rest his soul, Kobe Bryant, who, in my opinion, and people see it if you know anything about basketball, he brought something new to his game every season.
Right.
Which put him in that great player conversation.
Right, correct.
You know, so those are things. And then he asked players that he considered great players in the league, and they helped along the way. Frank says he seems to focus on defense than his fundamental offense. Well, Frank, I don't think it's not a fundamental. I think he's very fundamental.
Yeah.
You know, he's fundamental. He started basketball overseas, so they are extremely fundamental over there.
Yeah, they are.
I think what the difference is
comfortability,
is
man.
the comfortability and the complacency in the way that the league has changed right now.
You know what? Honestly, I truly believe he focuses so much on defense because he knows offensively. The certain moves that he has, they aren't moves that can truly get him a shot off. Those moves are created to get other people open.
Yeah.
And so he's more focused on defense to create more ability for him to get to the rim faster. If I take the ball from you, I don't really have nobody in front of me, and I'm up top when I do it.
Right.
Or if I get a steal baseline, now I got outlets. He can push the ball. That's his game. His game is turning defense into offense. He's really not a good half-court offensive player, naturally, because he's not a good shooter. But his defensive awareness allows him to be so creative. And because he's 6'10", it cuts passing lanes down. It cuts room for any guy to really
And people also
get
have
a
to
shot
understand, too, that there was a growth spurt.
Right.
You know your history. There was a growth spurt with Ben Simmons. And also, when he was in high school, he was a transition player.
Right.
He was never really a half-court player. He was a transition player.
Always had that.
He could get the ball and go, like we said about Scotty. Frank just says, Kobe was a student of the game. He always wanted to get better. That's why Kobe Bryant was great. He asked everybody questions. And that's what I'm saying. Kobe was just a different breed, because Kobe was around the NBA game as a youngster under his dad. Claude Robinson says, yeah, I agree. He has become content in his game, but that's where coaching comes in. Doc and Sam seem to be getting to him. I agree with that. And we can't expect great change mid-season. Absolutely. I think we'll see some more changes and improvements next season. Right now, we need to build this cast up, more shooters, and cultivate his aggression. Aggressive Ben is the best Ben. Absolutely.
And he's only been in the league for 4 years.
4 years.
For 4 years. So we talking about this dude like he's a real veteran who really needs to figure it out, because your career is almost over.
Yeah, he's only
just getting started.
Yeah, he's only got the ladder and go up and improve.
He's just getting started. 4 years in, he's just getting started. The problem was that his 4 years was not sculpted around veterans who could teach him. It was the youngest team in the league. We had and when we did get veterans on our team, well, guess what? We made it to the Eastern Conference Finals with Ilyasova, J.J. Redick, and all these dudes. So when we had guys who understood the game to a certain point, who were veterans, we were a more complete team. Guys knew their role. We were the #1 rebounding team in the league. We are not that now.
Right.
We're not that.
No.
But Doc is trying to offensively find some sort of chemistry with this team offensively. I can teach you areas to play defense, but when the offense is off, the key is to score more points than the other team.
Absolutely.
And to limit possessions of the other team. That is the key to win. But we got to take the fan hat off. We got to get back to some basketball 101 elements. And if you don't understand basketball 101 elements, then all you're doing is regurgitating stuff you done heard before. If you can't dig in the file cabinet and understand that when this play is going on, the motion of the play and why that motion is happening, then you really you don't understand basketball. You're just watching to see who scores more points.
Or who gets dunked on or whatever.
And you looking for highlights.
Claude Robinson chimes back in real quick. He says, right on, A. Him and Joe came into a losing culture.
That's what it was.
People underestimate the effect that had on both players.
Claude, let me tell you something, Class. Me and his brother worked together. Me and Class worked together for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
He and I would literally break every game down.
Oh, yeah.
We worked together for 8-9 years. This was something that there was stuff that he used to say to me, and I'm like, you know what? I ain't even peeped that, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So when he makes a comment, there are times when he makes a comment. When Clark makes a comment, I'm like, you know what, Clark? Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's more introspective, where he can give a lane that I might not have even been thinking. Vice versa, same way you do, you and I. And there are things in this game that players that play in that league, they know that we don't know.
Yeah.
And until we get those other elements, you don't know why this play is going this way. Like there are things with it. There's a game within the game within the game, bro.
Absolutely. That's what we always say.
And this team, man, like you said, this team, we had a losing culture.
Yeah, and this is year one of a new regime, a better regime of understanding basketball, because you've got two key coaches who played very well as players in the NBA.
And that plays a big part.
Huge part.
And they were both point guards.
Both of them. You know so the next quote, which will take us out more than likely, is, talent-wise, one of the best bigs ever. Name a big that can do all the things he can. He can play in any era. End quote. And this is Isaiah Thomas, the younger Isaiah Thomas, on one Joel Embiid.
Joel Embiid right now has, I believe, 3 other centers in the league. I think I wrote it down. I think it's Cat, Jokic, and K-Love, he's a power forward / center. But they're the only 3 active centers who shoot a higher free throw percentage than him. But Jokic is the only one who, number-wise, is closest to what Joel Embiid is doing right now.
Right.
Cat Cat is Cat. Cat gonna do what he's gonna do. But when you look at those 3 centers, look at where all 3 of those centers do. They're perimeter bigs. They can do stuff on the perimeter. Cat look like a guard at times.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between the 3 is, at times, Ben Simmons Joel Embiid will focus on getting these bigs in trouble, getting to the free throw line, putting pressure on.
Right.
Jokic doesn't put guys in free throw foul trouble. What Jokic does is he just pinpoint attacks all through different spots. He doesn't focus on one thing at a particular time.
Right.
He doesn't really put a lot of, because he shoots more jump shots, he shoots more perimeter shots than down there, but he will get down there.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid is a mixture, and what separates him from Jokic is his athleticism.
Yes.
I think Jokic at times, his cerebral mentality IQ might be slightly higher at times, but this dude is like a Hakeem Olajuwon footwork, a fadeaway Ewan jump shot, a physical brawnness of a type of Shaq mentality at times. So he has everything.
Cuzzo, thanks for tuning in.
He just got to stay healthy, man. He got to stay healthy.
How many times have you seen a 7-footer dribble into a Euro step and finish at the rim?
It doesn't happen too often. And the nature of the game now, because like what we talk about, how we train kids now.
And like they want to call it positionless basketball.
Well, we train kids now, regardless of how tall you're going to become, we're doing all footwork. We're doing all guard work. And you need to continue to do these guard workouts because
Absolutely.
you don't know how tall you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
If Anthony Davis grew up as a tall big man from the rip, he wouldn't be the Anthony Davis you know now.
No, he wouldn't be.
He was a point guard who had a growth spurt.
A
who
major
turned into
growth
that.
spurt.
So Paul Gasol, Marc Gasol, they were all guards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why their ability to pass as big men seems to be outstanding at times. You're like, yo, how you see that? Right. It's in his core. It's been in his nature to do it. These dudes, man, they like you said, they're hybrids. The center position is positionless.
Mm-hmm.
Guys play like guards.
Yep.
But the things that he does, you don't even think that Euro step's coming because of his size.
Absolutely.
And that 7'1" or whatever, and he's a brawny dude, but like tiptoes. He can tiptoe through the defense. He just at times looks sloppy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's,
he just fall all over.
That's definitely improving this season.
Yeah.
And a few of the things that I like in this season as opposed to some of the previous seasons, his command and demand of the ball in the post. Mm-hmm. He also is commanding the ball in certain spots.
Right.
Against certain players, certain centers, or when they have a switch and he gets a smaller guy, he knows now taking this dude. Like Shaq and them would always say, you look at this dude, it's barbecue chicken. I think the switch is on now. Yeah. And it can only get better. Okay. I like the improvements of his passing out of the double teams.
I was just
now.
about you just took the words out of my mouth, bro.
As we talk about today's game and we talk about the 3-point shot, he can shoot the 3-point shot, but the difference I see this year is he's not settling for that 3-point shot like he did last year, where he was certain plays where it called for him to shoot that 3-point shot. One of the other differences is, and his defense has been there throughout, there were times last season where Brett Brown had him somewhat camping out in the lane. It's different now where they're getting switch outs, and I watched the other night, he was on the wing guarding guards on the wing.
Right.
You know, so like you said, boss, that goes into the dedication, the concentration, and the footwork that he has within his realm of talents. But he also, like I said, is doing things that is kind of a lost art as far as for his position in the NBA right now. And he's not just doing it against smaller players. He's doing it against legit 7-footers. Yeah. Legit, what we like to say, centers in the league. And he's dominating. I think as he is 25 years old, I believe, he's starting to understand his body and starting to realize and take ownership on his skill set, where he's doing the things that he knows can get his team in the best position to get a bucket.
And I think he's paying more attention to his conditioning.
A lot more than he used to, which is a good sign. You know what I mean? I think that over this year, I mean, holistically, I think he's doing a much better job of maturing. Yeah. But we go back to that Charlotte game we was at, and that timeout, and he had the iPad, and literally during the timeout, he wasn't even going back in the game. Sat amongst the group and explained to them why this play was designed the way it was. I can't say that I've seen him do that now, but I think that experience and that portion, that leadership quality, it equates to what Doc Rivers can instill in this group. Right.
Because if he's our centerpiece got to be connected to everything. Yeah. He's the nucleus. Yeah. He got to be connected to everything that's going on. And I really would like to know, like, the type of time and hours that's going into film between Doc, Sam Cassell, the coaching, and him, and other players. Because when you watch the offense move, it does move fluidly. But there are times where it just misfires.
It misfires, yeah.
Naturally, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's
It's
gonna
gonna
happen. I mean,
happen.
especially it's gonna happen when you got basically three returning starters. You got two key pieces now added into this mix. But one of the things I was just getting ready to say was the fact that Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are the cornerstones. Then I was going to say, I go back to, and I know it's early, it's a new regime, but I go back to, I forget who they were playing, but the game not too long ago where he hyperextended his knee.
Yeah.
He went out, went to the locker room, they found out it was just a hyperextension.
Mm-hmm.
But then he came back in that game and scored either 23 of the team's 25 or 25 of the team's 27 points in that quarter, which shows me that his dedication and his focus was at that particular point. Oh yeah, y'all got me shook up a little bit, but I'm still here.
Now I can't say
Y'all
he would have did that last year.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm saying I like that improvement.
You know what I mean?
Because he immediately came right back in the game as soon as he was allowed to. And he came back in and went right to work, you know. And I think now he's beginning to understand a lot more. And this goes piggyback to what you said, Bob, about wanting to be able to see what goes on in film and other conversations off the court or outside of game situations, where he now knows how to pick his positions, where I'm getting this bucket.
Right.
The play is run. But no, I'm getting this bucket. So you give it to me here in the high post, and I look, and I recognize what the defense is doing. And then there are moments when he's off the dribble a little bit, he's waving people away. Or he's kicking it back, and he's immediately going down in the block and saying, no, don't go nowhere else. I'm just resetting. You come in here, and I'm going to get this bucket. Or I'm going to go to the free throw line where he's comfortable as well.
And that's what you want. You want your best player to create the best opportunity in that 24 seconds. Everybody else listen, this is reaction basketball. Everybody needs to react on what the best player on the court is doing. If I got shooters, spot it up. But one of my shooters can attack the basket, then I'm going to be looking for him to jab and cut. You know what I mean? To create that opening.
Right.
I can get them the ball. They collapse. Now I got another shooter in the corner. That's just motion offense. That's just motion reaction basketball. But it starts with your number one guy.
Right.
And there has to be some telepathic communication between the number one guy on offense and the number two guy on offense. You know what I mean? So if I know that I'm a post guy, my number one guy is a post guy, shooters get ready.
Right.
Slasher be ready.
It's a lot of Bulls.
And that's what it is.
The Steve Kerrs and the John Paxsons. Look.
And that's all it is.
Be ready to shoot.
All it is knowing who you have on the court with you, knowing what their abilities, their capabilities are, and then sometimes you may have to force the issue as the number one guy. We always said that, when that clock running down, I sometimes want, listen, I'd rather you shoot over two people than to give it to a shaky joker 30 feet out.
Right.
I'm not going to rely on this dude.
Right.
But I need you sometimes to take that big shot, because that big shot, whether you make it or miss it, it's a confidence builder of knowing other teams know, oh, he going to take that shot. Now other guys truly are open. They don't have to sag off guys knowing that I ain't getting the ball. I know you ain't getting the ball. And if you get the ball, you're already scared to death anyway, so it's not a big deal. Right. That's half a defense already been played on you.
So I don't even have to go for
I ain't even got to worry about
I can go halfway.
And that's why that was
I can play two people.
And that's why it was a big shot when Tobias Harris hit that game winner.
In the Lakers game.
In that Lakers game, that was a big shot. Forget all the craziness that allowed them to come back. That shot was a big shot for him because he played a good game. But he recognized something. Everybody else on the court recognized. And he knew the switch. He didn't have to think about it. It was reaction. He went and got it.
Claude, once again, he says he's facing more double and triple teams than anyone in the league. Other dudes are going to have to hit shots if we going to win in the offense. Yes. Joe just has to remember he doesn't have to make the perfect pass, Just trust the offense and your teammate. But you're right. He has to take that shot before that double comes to.
Mm-hmm. He ain't got to make the perfect pass.
No.
He got to make the perfect read.
Right.
It's not about the pass.
That's what it is.
It's the
perfect
read.
I agree.
See it, like he said, seeing it before it comes. I see it, I read it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once the movement starts to happen, now I know where to pass. Right. Pass ain't got to be perfect. I just got to get that ball to the area where it needs to be.
Got to get the right read.
Yeah, it's the right read.
So, just to backtrack just real quick, and for all the people who have probably changed their minds now because the team is now first in the East, best record in the East, Ben Simmons is playing a lot better. And people that were all in that change. Thanks for tuning in, Phil Williams. Go back to Ben Simmons just real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Simmons currently leads the league in these particular categories. And some of these categories are things that don't show up in the, what you would like to say, natural stat sheets. Deflections per game, 4. Loose balls recovered per game, 1.6. Total loose balls recovered, 3.6. Second in total deflections so far at 92. He's 6th in steals at 1.7 per game.
And we looking for improvement. I think the only other thing would be improvement would be shot blocking.
Yeah.
But the thing about shot blocking is it's a little weird because one, he's a perimeter defender as well, so it's hard to get shots. It's hard to block shots on the perimeter,
right?
Than opposed to being closer to the basket. Shots are normally blocked more closer to the basket than they are on the perimeter. But he's a perimeter defender, so when you look at some of your better perimeter defenders in the league, post and present, most weren't good shot blockers. They weren't good shot blockers. They can get you. They can get you a block here and there, but they weren't consistent shot blockers because there's a lot of lateral movement on defense. Help blocking, the backside help, or the backside reading of a shot block. Those are additional blocks, but they're not perimeter blocks. Those are blocks that happen when there is a defender in front of a person. They're trying to shoot over the person, and you come over and help defense and get a block. But to block a shot on the perimeter is extremely hard. That's why most of your best shot blockers are big men. Because they're closer to the basket. You have more people trying to get to the basket than opposed to being out on the perimeter. So for him, I honestly believe that if that was to sneak up a little bit, then I honestly believe he got a shot at being Defensive Player of the Year in that regard. Absolutely. I honestly believe it because this dude is doing it on a consistent basis. And he's taking it as a challenge, and he wants to do it. Nobody wants to play defense nowadays.
That's right.
So how wouldn't he win?
That's right.
You know what I mean? Nobody's taking that initiative to attempt to lock people down.
Like what did Charles and Kenny say on TNT at one point? I think it was last season. They said, being a good player is talent. Being a great player is a mindset.
Oh, true.
You know, and it's a lot of truth to that.
True, it's a lot of truth.
A lot of truth to that, and a lot of things, and not of that. Those few words, a lot of people will not truly understand. So, one more quote, and we can talk a little bit about this one, and then I'm going to close out with one. And these last two are something that takes us back to the basketball that we grew up on. Okay, this is one from George Karl, and he says, and I quote, "I don't think Julius Erving gets the recognition for being one of the greats. He was unstoppable. You were only doing your best to control him." End quote.
Doc gets overlooked. Doc gets overlooked in a way that he should be revered.
Transcendent player.
Transcendent player. Single-handedly probably saved the NBA.
Oh, of course.
At the time, like we know, but at the time, you know, the NBA was losing all their viewers to college basketball. You know, along comes Doc. Ratings
into
go
the
through
flash
roof.
of the ABA.
And then the ABA, that deal that brought him over, brought a lot of other guys to the NBA at the time where it was just a whole, that dynamic was going on.
And just real quick, people, some of you who may not know much about the ABA was initially a laughable league because a lot of the NBA players at that time, or the NBA brass at that time, felt like that a lot of those guys in the ABA were one-trick ponies. And it was all about the show, and they really didn't have a skill set to play in the NBA. And like we said, we talk about Doc right now, who transcended that, and then there were others that followed that became either great or very good players in the NBA in their own right. Two that I'm just going to mention just right off the handle, one of Doc's teammates who won a championship with him, and Bobby Jones, the Minister of Defense, and then the Iceman, George Gervin. So it can happen, and I agree with that quote because, like Baldy just mentioned, I feel like Doc gets overlooked at times, and you just got to do your history, people, and don't be ashamed to say that you don't understand some things, and just do your research. Like, people do research on a lot of stuff. They Google a lot of stuff. Like now, people will Google how many times somebody got dunked on in the game, stuff like that. Where if you get a better understanding of the overall concept of basketball, and this is going into have people and players having a basketball IQ, you can understand some of the things that are going on a lot better. You can understand how some of these quotes, and George Karl was a coach, very good coach, who was also a player. So he understands. And again, I definitely agree with that when you say that, because like Baldy just mentioned, you could argue or debate that Dr. J pretty much saved the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back and you look at his story, you can find it on Netflix or wherever, when they talk about him going to the Rucker, and the initial stages were Tiny Archibald, some other guys that were already
Household
playground
names,
legends,
yeah.
household names, and their first response was Julius Erving. Like, who was he? I never heard of him, and whatever. But then you look at that turnout when he played at the Rucker Park. Unfathomable. People were sitting on light poles in trees. There's a school there. They were on the roof of that school, on the ledge of that roof, to see this guy play. And that says a whole lot.
It says everything, man.
It says a lot to one of the greatest players. 10 minutes. We're going to leave you with this quote. And this is a quote from Sean Kemp. Okay. I don't know if I sent this to you already.
No, that's why I'm digging in. My ears.
This is the quote. And
I wonder if I've heard it.
Yeah, and I'm reading this now. All right, and it says, I broke a lot of Larry Bird's Indiana records. I'm a rookie. It's only Larry Bird. He puts his shorts on the same way I do. He let me know what he was going to do, and he said, you're the one who broke all my records? Sean Kemp says, I said yes. He says, Larry Bird says, I have something to show you tonight. He had 40 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, and called every shot.
The league that we know as of today, and this is why I said, stop taking players from this era and try to put them in a back era.
Can't do
and
it.
compare them.
Can't do it.
You can only take the back era and try to see if they would fit in this era. You can't go backwards. You can only go forwards.
Absolutely.
So you got a guy like Larry Bird, who was at the time a veteran. Sean Kemp comes in. Young rookie. and you got a guy who's a sniper. He's literally a face, one of the major faces in the league. And this is what I mean. Guys will say, if LeBron played back X, Y, and Z, he would have did this. Well, if LeBron played back then, take away all the tools that allow him to become who he is. So he wouldn't have been lifting weights, because they didn't do that back in the day, right? He wouldn't have been working on no footwork, really, in terms of being a guard running, because they didn't do that back in the day. Magic is an enigma.
Right. He wouldn't have went to another team to try and get a ring.
He would have been a center.
Or power forward.
Or power forward, right? Handling the ball probably would have been out the picture. Magic is one guy. He's one. There was not another Magic Johnson. So if you take him and put him in that era, he's an athletic small forward.
Yes.
He wouldn't have been shooting threes and all that he's doing now. So you can't take a guy with an evolutionary game and put him in a pre-evolutionary period. That's not fair to the game.
It's not.
But you can take guys from this pre-evolutionary period, put them in this evolutionary period and say, yo, the way this game is played now, if he played now, he could still do this. If he played now, he could still do that. But trying to put these guys up here and bring them back down here is not fair, because the game changed 6 times over for this guy.
Absolutely.
Where that wasn't there 40 years, 30 years ago. You can't take a guy who graduated high school in 2003 and put him in 1985. It don't make sense.
Yes, it won't work.
You know what I mean? It just does not make sense. And they were specialists. Guys were specialists.
And like you mentioned the point where back then those guys didn't lift weights, but there was a strong physical presence.
It was.
In the NBA. Hence
it
the
was
bad
toughness.
boys. Hence the bad boys and the Michael Jordan rules.
It was
So
toughness.
but even before that, there was a physicalness
in the 70s. They was physical,
that
man.
Transcended a lot of players. I think back to, there was a short time ago, a few years back, I'm watching TNT and they're talking to Gary Payton and they're talking about Steph Curry, and Gary Payton put it out there and he mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, when I played, you could hand check. He said, you can't touch nobody now.
Right.
He said, but I watched what Steph does. He said, and a lot of times it's nothing more than a dribble to either get to the side or to get to the front or to get a step away from you. Gary Payton said, if I played against him in my era, he's going to go where I want him to go because I can hand check him. He said, and the biggest difference now is you can't touch these guys.
Right. And he's a special guy because he took playing defense to heart.
Absolutely.
Everybody did.
Everybody didn't.
Everybody did not.
What's going on, Ant?
Yeah, everybody did not think about stopping the guy in front of him, because that's how a guy like Reggie Miller, who could not dribble, could still get shots off. That's a guy like Mitch Richmond, who could dribble a little bit and got shots off. There were guys that could still put the ball down in an era. Steve Smith, in an era. Rolando Blackman. You know, the list goes on and on. These dudes, even though we're physical, they still were able to get shots off in the physical era. Question is, can a guy like Steph endure the physicality even though he's a shooter? Would he be able to endure that? I mean, the length in which he shoots is ridiculous. Them dudes in the 80s would be like, who letting him shoot from half court?
Yeah, and you said ball was right. Yes, right. What's up, man?
Who is letting him shoot?
You are absolutely right, and it would be totally different.
Yeah, it would.
Some of these guys, and this is just from me, like we say, having an understanding of the game and knowing the game and knowing some of these players. Some of these players that are all-stars in this era would not be all-stars back in 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be.
Well, they got rid of the center position. It was a center's league back then. So everything functioned off the center. We had probably, arguably, if ain't even no argument. The 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, mid going to late 90s, was wrapped around the center position, the bigs.
Shaq.
The big,
So,
all bigs. You know what I mean? I mean,
Hakeem.
you got Hakeem, you got Pat Ewing, you got Dave Robinson, you got
Yao Ming doesn't get hurt.
You got all these guys, man, and these center positions was extremely valuable.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is go back into the draft era. You go back into the drafts and you see where these centers went. Now you look in this era, man, them guards getting picked early. Those guards are getting picked early.
Guards and wing players.
And that's what the league is into now. The league is into a more up-paced tempo game, a more fast-paced offense. More shots go up.
Yeah.
That's why they was even thinking about having a 4-point line.
Yeah. Which I think is crazy. and you know, I'm over yesterday.
That'll kill the game of basketball, man.
And yesterday, me and the missus were watching TV, and we're watching Love and Basketball. And this quote just stuck out to me. And it's the part where Sanaa Lathan is finally at USC, and the coach is getting on her in practice. And she tells her, offense sells tickets, defense wins games. Now, we usually say defense wins championships.
Yeah.
But just relating to what everything that we just talked about with these quotes and IQs and the way the game is transcended and evolved and changed, think about that. Offense sells tickets, defense wins games. And then she later on in the movie, she ended up showing it. Where
she cut
she
off,
threw a ball, made a errant pass,
and got back.
But she hustled back and took that charge and sealed that win.
Yeah, and that's the game. That's what the game is, man. And to anybody that's coaches, man, like if you're not teaching kids defense, and you're not teaching kids,
you're doing them a disservice.
How to minimize what the next team's best player can do, and you're doing a disservice to every kid you coach. Because what you're not doing is you're not giving them what they're going to encounter on the next level up.
Absolutely.
Whatever level that's going to be, whether it's high school, whether it's college, if you're not equating that skill set of defense and understanding a player's comfortabilities and how to make people uncomfortable, you shortchanging this kid. You shortchanging them. I'm not worried about what this kid can do if they make it to the next level. Because if they make it to the next level of college basketball, everybody play defense, bro.
Everybody.
You don't have a choice.
That's right.
Because everybody's on an interview, a live interview, to make it to the ultimate level. So they're going to do things that they probably wouldn't normally do. You know what I mean? And then when they make the league, what happens is the things that you're comfortable with doing, now you're going to do them all the time.
Yep.
If you really did not want to play defense, James Harden played defense in college. He definitely played defense in college. Gilbert Arenas played defense in college. Getting to the league and becoming the guys that they were, those teams said, we need you more as an offensive weapon. So we're going to draft guys and trade for guys that's going to give us that energy, that'll allow you more energy to get us in rotate. It's not that they can't. It's a want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we aren't giving this to our kids early and letting them see it. Then what happens to the game of basketball, instead of it elevating, it just stays still. And it may go up a notch here and there. One or two players, a Ben Simmons comes along and kind of shows you something different, that you can be productive in this league and your name can mean something if you do play defense. Those things happen, but not too often anymore.
Not too often. Absolutely.
Because the defense just not what people really truly want to see.
Yep.
And he's kind of, his offense may not be all that good, but I guarantee you this. If the Lakers was about to make a deal with the Sixers to get Ben Simmons, and they gave him 1,000 picks and all that, and he ends up going to L.A. with Anthony Davis and LeBron, nobody would be able to beat them, because now you have a premier defensive stopper who would be able to just do it.
Yep.
And your best guy, offensively, wouldn't stand a chance against them three.
Not at all.
It would be almost unfair.
And it would be
that's
even
how good of a
easier.
defender he is.
It would be even easier for LeBron and
Yeah,
AD.
you can't let a
On
guy
the
like
offensive
him
end.
get out of your possession on your team. You can't let him. You can't let him go.
You're right, and very rare.
You
Absolutely.
can't. He is rare. He's so rare that the only person next to him that did it was Scottie Pippen.
Yep.
That's the rarity.
Yep.
And the last
And
time
look how
Scottie
long
was
ago
that
that
great was about 98.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So look how rare
And look at the
is.
span.
We talking 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's the rarity and how good this guy is.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So for all these Sixers fans who saying, well, let's trade him and get the shooter, his shooters come out of college every year.
Yeah.
Defenders don't come out of college every year.
Yeah, you can find shooters all
And
over
then
the
you can
place.
find them anywhere.
Absolutely. That being said, folks, another great episode installment of the Sports Rap Podcast. Again, my partner's back with me, so you know how it goes down. I hope you enjoyed it. For everybody that tuned in, we definitely appreciate you. We appreciate your comments. All of this stuff will go up. It's live on Facebook, but it will go up on YouTube. The audio will go up on iHeart, Spreaker, wherever you get your podcast. Before we close out, I'm going to give you schedules for tonight in the 3 leagues that I've been mostly consistent with right now. Monday in the NBA, the Bulls are at the Pacers, the Rockets are at the Wizards, the Hawks are at the Knicks, the Sixers are up against the Utah Jazz, the Cavs go against the Warriors, the Heat and the Clippers, the Nets and the Kings. Monday night NCAA basketball, number 9 Virginia faces off against number 17 Florida State. Number 2 Baylor goes up against number 14 West Virginia. And number 7 Texas Tech will face off against Texas Christian. In the NHL, Seattle is at Arizona. The New York Islanders are at Buffalo. The Ottawa is at Toronto. Columbus is in Carolina. The Florida Panthers play off against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Chicago against Detroit. Nashville versus Dallas. Winnipeg versus Edmonton. Calgary at Vancouver. And Anaheim at San Jose. You can find me at SportsRap_D on Instagram and Twitter. Also in the group all week long on social media, Sports Rap Podcast. The website, Sports Rap Radio Show. YouTube, Sports Rap TV. And like I said, the podcast on iHeart, Google, Apple, and most of your podcast outlets. Partner, where can they find you?
You can reach me on Instagram. That's Ball75. You can reach me on Facebook. That's Aaron Baldy Moore. And shout out to Gab, St. Joe's, baby. Gab, keep doing your thing, baby. Keep doing your thing.
Yes, indeed. So, lastly, folks, again, closing out another episode of the Sports Rap Podcast. It's Monday. Be great on purpose. Be careful out there. It's still a little slippery. The call is for some freezing rain later tonight. And a reminder, and I will remind you also during the week, next week's show will be at evening time just for next Monday, the 22nd. It'll probably be around 6 to 8. But I will definitely keep you abreast of all that. Like we say, have a great Monday. See you next week, folks.